said, well, you could do that, or, we can go down, my friend has a pond and we can go fishing. I said,
All set,
or
Ted?
we can go to Huizinga Park. He says, no, I'm not going anywhere.
Great.
So-
Well, hello, everybody. It is Monday, June 9 at 4 o'clock. We'll call to order this meeting of the Holland Board of Public Works Board of Directors. Janik, we have a roll call, please.
Thompson,
Present.
Maloof,
Here.
Lilly,
Here.
Engbers,
Here.
Lynn,
Here.
Corbin, Couch,
Here.
Van Beek.
For the record, we have a quorum. Could we have an action on the agenda, please?
Move that we accept the agenda as it's been presented.
Second.
Motion by Lilly, second by Maloof. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. At this time, we'll open our meeting to communications from the audience. We provide an opportunity for anybody to communicate to the board at this time, requiring that you state your name and address for the record and adhere to a 5-minute limit. Any communications from the audience today? Hearing none, we'll close communications to the audience and turn it over to Ted for the consent agenda.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm not Dave, obviously. Dave is at APPA National Conference in New Orleans, probably enjoying some hot and humid weather, I'm sure. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. The first are the minutes from the May regular meeting as well as the study session. Item B is a grant of utility easement for the Holland City Fiber project. So occasionally, this is a private development, so we need permission to go in there if their deed doesn't already give us that. So we've done that on a number of projects already this year. We have a capital budget amendment for the MyMeter customer portal project. Honestly, that was a miss on our part. There's a number of vendor expenses that communicate with MyMeter to get them the data, primarily Northstar, who's our CES, Surveillant, who is our outage management system now, MeterSense, which is all the usage data. So in the developing the budget, we missed that part of those expenses in the budget. And then item D is a budget amendment for electric distribution capital. Transformer costs are increasing. I think in the recommendation there was an example that was given there. It's just to cover this last month. We just want to make sure that we're running out of money in that budget. It's not an increase for total amount of dollars, just moving it from one bucket to the other.
Any questions on these consent items?
And on the data stream activity, that's a one-time thing to switch over from the old system to the
It
new
is
system.
a one-time thing, correct? Yep.
Okay. I'd like to
Motion
move that we accept the consent agenda as it's been presented.
Second.
Motion by Lilly, supported by Maloof. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Major projects.
Yeah, if Becky could go to the major projects. Holland City Fiber. So fiber hoods 1 through 6 are complete. That isn't a change from the last time. We were hoping right on the heels here soon fiber hood 7 would be complete, but that's been delayed a few weeks. They are working on overhead construction in fiber hood 8. Underground construction is done in fiber hood 8, as well as underground construction in fiber hood 9 and 10. So that we're getting to the east side now, and that's in the Heights area. So a lot of people are happy about that. Still working on some final closeout of those first few fiber hoods, and almost to 2,000 total customers now. So you'll kind of see reflective April financials. You'll see we'll be catching up a little bit. We're almost at 100,000 a month in revenue on Holland City Fiber itself, so that's good. That's good. Electric distribution, still working on the outage management system. We have a go live planned for next month in July, middle of July. 17th 17th Street lift station, really no change. We're waiting on materials to come. That won't get started till the fall. Southwest Heights is moving on to phase 2, so the water main installation is complete for phase 1, and they're working on services right now, so any of the lead service lines that need to be replaced, that's what they're working on this week, and then they'll move on to phase 2, so that's moving right along. Unit 7 major inspection is, again, not until the fall, so some preliminary activities going on there, planned for start in November. Water treatment plant dehumidifier replacement, again, really early in that project. Looks like they're cutting a doorway into the wall to actually get that old equipment out and get the new equipment in. And then same with the chemical storage addition, still very early in that project. I think Joel said we're waiting on some permits still for that, so that will start as soon as we can get those, as soon as July. WRF raw pump replacement, looks like demolition phase of the project is done, and they're working on installation of those pumps one at a time. We do need some of those always operational, of course, so that's a plan, that's a pretty big planning process by staff and the contractor. I'm gonna have Joel maybe talk about the digester project and where we are with that.
I don't know if a lot's changed from last month, still kind of in the same position of wrapping up the last few kind of punch list items. They were really waiting for weather, which now we have in our favor, so those should be wrapped up hopefully this month. And then the big thing really remaining is the addressing the design deficiencies. Don't have a timeline on that yet. We're still waiting on it. We did get pump sizes they're looking to replace with and those types of things. So the details are starting to come in. Things are still moving good. So we're moving along kind of a couple parallel paths, one with the resolution of those issues and then with the rest of the contract, working towards resolution with the contractor for kind of close out. So we are continuing to progress.
How much are you holding on that contract yet?
I think it's about 1.5 million.
Is that sufficient for
Yeah, we
the
believe.
service that's not being provided?
Yes, it should be sufficient for resolution of anything that we would have to do. So we actually, that's part of what we're working through now is actually try and get a better handle on that, as we work through closeout, if there's any decrease in retainage or, also working through like LD discussions, liquidated damages, those types of things right now.
And you think that's enough if they're not able to provide the fixes to increase the capacity that we could
Yes,
with that amount?
with that amount, we believe we could cover
Okay.
resolution of the issue.
And they haven't pushed back on what we're holding?
Oh, they'd like us to hold less.
I think
Sure.
it's-
But have they formally pushed back with letters and things of that nature, or are they just more friendly banter?
More informal. They did send a pay request at one point requesting release of part of that, but haven't really pushed the issue because they understand we're working through this closure. We've been communicating with them on that.
I think we have still a significant bond.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's
Joel,
significant
on that
bonding in
project,
place as
that-
well.
yeah, I think it's 25 million still at this point.
No, I think it was reduced from that, but it's still,
Still pretty hefty.
I think it's still at least 5 million is still hefty for what is remaining.
Joel, from a engineering expertise standpoint, who is providing that oversight as to whether or not the system is capable of coming up to a higher level?
Well, the people whose system it is, CB&I, are doing a lot of the design. They have a third-party engineer they're working with on their end to verify their design, and then we have our engineers at Donahue who are reviewing that.
Okay.
So there's several layers there.
Okay.
I don't know if you or Alex want to continue with the next two.
Electrical system upgrades. This is the one we were waiting forever on the switchgear. We do have that now. Now it's really coordination, in large part between this project and the raw pump project that Ted spoke about earlier. The same electrician is doing same company's doing both of those projects, the electrical work. So what they're gonna be doing is swapping out, there's a couple transformers as part of the switchgear project, kind of as they're doing the work on the raw pumps, and then when they're done with the raw pumps, they're gonna actually put in the switchgear itself. And then the disinfection project, that one, we're still in that design phase. We actually just had a design workshop, so we saw the first round of the draft prints for that. So it's moving along, but we're looking at bidding around the end of summer. End of summer, early fall.
Any other questions on major projects?
Did you get through all?
Yep. that was
Okay.
all.
We okay? Great. Go on to financial review then.
Yeah, this is not the end of a quarter, so I'll just do a cursory review. I guess the major messages, things are staying very similar as to what we've talked about in the past. For electric, industrial revenues lagging a bit, mostly because of what we had planned on the LG ramp up that really hasn't occurred. I guess on a positive note, in May, they did tip into the market-based rate, so their total usage was over 30 megawatts, just over 30 megawatts for a few hours, but plus side for them, their energy rate was really good. The market at that time was really good, so that we will point that out to them, that they benefited from that. But so they're just getting there. We haven't really been, they haven't been consistent with what they've been telling us and what's been actually occurring. So we'll just see. We're going to see how it goes again in the future. So, purchase power and fuel again have that net positive relationship still. We're still getting a lot of credit on wholesale sales, which is why that purchase power variance is so high, with just a little bit more fuel cost. So that's a net positive on those two line items. I would point out distribution is favorable in electric. It will continue to be favorable, but you'll probably see a pretty big expense there from an event in May that we'll talk about later this meeting. That's pretty much on electric.
Well, the other
Same
thing,
as-
maybe Ted, I'd just point out, the purchase power too, a part of that ties into the industrial line on revenue. It's really that difference in what we were expecting from LG. So
Yep.
obviously, if we have less sales, that's less purchase power we're doing. So that's part of that as well.
Yep. Thanks, Joel.
Is LG being supplied through a single substation now, or are they?
So phase one, their ESMI 1 is actually two different substations, industrial in South Holland, and then all of phase 2 is through East Point.
Okay,
Yep.
that's,
Will they ever convert the original side to the new substation or no? East Point?
That'd be up to us, and
Oh, okay.
we'd rather not, just from a risk perspective.
Sure, makes
Yep.
sense.
For water, again, in industrial, just revenues lagging a bit. I don't expect that to get a whole lot better in May, as it's been pretty cool. May was a pretty cool month. I commended our water conservation folks for all they've done in May, which, you know, yes, yeah, it's easy to do when it's
Good
cold and rainy.
discipline there.
Same as some previous months, production, operations, and maintenance. Actually, that's a little bit abnormal because of some expense with some painting activities that we couldn't capitalize in the filter gallery portion of the plant. And then that distribution O&M that we're over budget there for the month is due mostly to, we had about $200,000 in expense hit for the repair of the 32nd Street transmission main failure from April. So that's where that expense is hitting.
trunkage seems still to be really high, different. Is it?
That one's, trunkage is all related to new customers, so it's kind of hard to predict. We've been really favorable to budget over the last few years because of growth, and LG was a big part of that. They paid quite a bit of trunkage this year when we set their meters, so that one's always a little tough to predict. For wastewater, commercial industrial continues to outperform our budget, which is nice on the revenue side, on the sales side. On the expense side, again, mostly an increase in costs on chemicals and power. Things like chlorine costs have gone up, but on the treatment and operations and maintenance side, big savings because mostly due to sludge disposal costs in the digester operation. So that's been favorable. There was a good initially when the generator went in on the digester. There were some power factor penalties that we ourselves were assessing ourselves because of some power factor issues. That has been repaired, so some changes need to be made to the controls on the generator. So the nice thing is they're out of that penalty now, and that expense will be avoided in the future. So, and then finally, broadband just continued to kind of lag to what our plan was for Holland City Fiber. You see, April revenue was about $69,000. At the end of May, we had close to 2,000 customers at 1864, so we're about almost to 100,000 a month now. So you'll see that continue to climb. It's just that we had about that 3 or 4 month lag earlier this year that's kind of still affecting things. So we're continue to save on the expense side. We're not quite to the operating income we thought on budget, but we're doing a favorable job there on expense. That's really the financial review, unless anybody has any
Ted,
questions.
a curious question. So many of our projects are capital intensive, and wondering if some of the capital items that we buy are coming from outside the United States. If so, are we caught in any tariff situations?
Yeah, I don't know, Chuck might be able to speak to this, but we do get, Lynn, who's our purchasing person, does pass on letters we get. One of the big things we have been buying from South Korea are transformers. During, after COVID, we have a great, SETI is what they're called. They're a great distribution transformer supplier that were lower cost, very high quality, and their delivery was a lot sooner than a lot of the domestic manufacturers. We've continued that direct relationship with them, which is also saving us money. But transformer costs in general with steel and aluminum tariffs, the price of copper has gone way up. That recommendation you can see where we've asked more money is we're paying about 4 times as what for a transformer now and what we were 5 years ago. Chuck, I can let you chime in on any other things.
In the last couple of weeks, and they honored their pricing because the order was placed several months ago, so they didn't do anything with their pricing there. But coming into the port here, we had to pay a duty, and it was about $38,000 that was unplanned for. That's been the first hit so far that anything of notice. We have received several notifications from a lot of vendors, but it's kind of like during COVID too. They had an excuse to raise prices, but without a really good explanation. So we're seeing a lot of that, but we haven't really felt it yet.
Yeah, it's been a little hard to keep track too because it might be 50% and then 10% and then 25%, and I think it all depends when it's actually going through the port what you end up paying ultimately.
The SETI tariffs were 10%.
Yeah, and at a time we were thought they might be 40. Yeah, so you could look at it that it's favorable, I guess.
Do we have any visibility to pause or on deliveries or anything like that to avoid tariffs? Or try to just minimize the situation?
I guess I don't know the specific terms, if maybe Chuck can handle, if we would want to cancel an order. The problem with transformers now is the lead times are so long that if you cancel an order, now you have even longer lead times and you might even pay more. I don't know if there's a way necessarily that we could hedge that, and other than just the regular orders that we do. We've been pretty fortunate throughout this whole time that new customers haven't had to wait. I know there's a number of other utility projects locally that developers have come to us or have had to wait because folks just didn't have transformers to build a new subdivision, et cetera. So our purchasing folks have been pretty on top of that situation. Yeah, things are generally, to Chuck's point, not getting less expensive, that's for sure.
When, I know you've talked about, and I know you expanded the property for storage of transformers and so forth. In terms of managing inventory of when you buy something in the lead time, what kind of inventory do you have in terms of, when do you run out kind of thing? I mean, I came from a fast-moving inventory world, but, your life has changed a lot.
Yeah.
When you're ordering something, is that for 2 years out, or how's it, in your inventory?
So our reorder points, we've adjusted. So soon after COVID, with a lot of the lead time increases, we readjusted our reorder points so that we had more on hand.
Yep.
Wire, transformers specifically. Meters have been an issue, both electric and water at times.
Yeah.
Steve has been working with the warehouse just recently to shrink back some of those. So because lead times are getting better, we don't need as much inventory on hand. We're doing a lot of make-ready work for the Holland City Fiber project and electric.
Yep.
So our replacement rate has been lower, so we're using them at a reduced rate. That'll end here this year at some point, but yeah, we try to keep a handle on the best way, and sometimes it's a crapshoot on. I think things are generally still longer lead times than prior to COVID, still for sure. We've been kind of lucky on broadband. Fiber and conduit and things like that have been readily available, so that's been good for that project. But yeah, it's a ever-changing environment, I guess I would say.
Okay, thanks.
Real good. Want to again enter the regular agenda items?
Yeah, thank you. So folks from Marsh are here. We have our property insurance renewal. This is really a ask for an up to amount because the numbers haven't been finalized. There is some good news, so now I'll let Chuck and those folks relay that, and then if you have any questions on that, I'm sure they're happy to entertain them.
Thanks, Ted. With us tonight from Marsh, we have John Hurley. He's a managing director at Marsh, and Ben Kaufman, senior VP. On the happy side, Ben's a local, so we've got some local presence here for our broker, which is great. On the downside of that, he was driving down the river the other day when we had the trouble in the wastewater plant, so no more secrets. So the energy production property coverage expires June 30. And they've been working on this now for the last couple of months to bring in the best prices they can locate for the carriers that are covering our program. Just a few years ago, we only had about 5 carriers that dealt with us. Now I think we're up to 9 last year and 10 this year. Is it 10? Potentially 11. And that's what they're working on right now. There's one carrier that we've not dealt with recently, Zurich, that actually has very aggressive pricing, premium costs. Well, John can correct me, but better than some of our other premiums. And they're trying to bring them in for a piece of the action, but that's been a long discussion so far. So if there's the attachment, Becky, if you can bring that up. It's going to be hard to see probably. And I'm going to hand the microphone to these guys so they probably have this memorized because I don't. We have a relatively, I don't know if this is complex or not. It's complex to me. We got a lot of folks in this pie with different layers. The layers are off on the far right-hand side, and so it's an interesting combination of factors.
Yeah, sure. So good evening. We're happy to be back and see you again. And as Chuck was saying, it's a little bit better news this year because the global property market has we call it softened, become a little bit more competitive.
You want to come up to the podium?
Sure, I could do that.
And you can point at the screen if there's. Yeah. Else we're all trying to.
Right.
Who is that guy talking?
Okay, so as I was saying, the market has gotten a little more competitive. I don't know how much of this you want to hear, but you can see in our rates here, things have come down. And it's just because the market's become more competitive, finally. They collected a lot of premium when we've had all these horrible losses for the last 6 or 7 years. And so premiums had gone up quite a bit, so they were having to charge more premium. But finally, in January, the reinsurance market, which really controls what we call the retail market, where we all shop, the reinsurance market treaties were renewed at a lower cost. So they're able to pass that lower cost down to the customer. So anyhow, what we did this year with Chuck's and all of your help was we took a look at our property values over here. The expiring values were $449 million, and they had not been adjusted upward for quite a while. We were dealing with the premium increases, and the carriers were somewhat satisfied or gave us a break by not increasing our values every year for inflation. So this was the year, because the market has gotten more competitive, this was the year to finally get our values increased a little bit. So I think from a percentage standpoint, we took the values up, it's right here, 7.6%, okay? But overall, as we're going into finalize the terms, thus far, our premium is down 2.5%. So if we were to do an apples-to-apples comparison with last year's values, our premium would be down 10%. So that's good. So we're just going to increase the values to get them to the right level so everything's properly insured as best we can do, and then seize the rate reduction of really 10% overall. We have all the same carriers except one. Lancashire was one that was on the program last year. They had a small piece. They've kind of gotten out of the business, so that's been good. We've been able to increase a few of the other markets. But these are all global markets. The gray ones are, in the U.S., Aegis is kind of your lead carrier. They're experts in energy and power and utilities. So they're offering the 25% share. We'll probably cut them back to 22. We're actually oversubscribed. So we've had to trim back a few markets, and so we have London in here. We have the Swiss are in here. And Zurich has, so we send the submission to all these markets to make sure we're looking for the best deals. And Zurich, which is based in Switzerland but has a very large U.S. operation, they were interested in taking a large position, but they haven't hit the mark on the terms and conditions of the policy that we have. They're not quite as good, their terms. So we also sort of think that they have not been on the program before. Suddenly this year they want in. I think they're looking for premium, looking for new business. I think we're going to put the brakes on them a little bit. We'll see what they come down to. If they're willing to play with our terms, our deductibles, our limits, et cetera, terms and conditions, then fine, they can come in, and we'll give them maybe a little piece of the pie, get their foot in the door this year, and then maybe we can, if they play nice in the sandbox, we can bump them up next year. But we don't need them right now. So we've got really good terms from everybody else. But that's what Chuck was talking to, is this one new player, Zurich. We may get some of their capacity. So your limit's $245 million, same as last year. Your retentions, deductibles are the same as last year. Last year, we took the deductible on the steam turbines up, I think, to $1 million to save some money last year. You have no claims. That's fantastic. Hope it stays that way. Anything else, Chuck, I'm leaving out, or?
No, that's fine. We did get a notification from Aegis this week that we're getting a rebate from last year.
Yes.
So,
That's the nice part about Aegis is they do, if you stay with them, they give you a little bit of a credit at the renewals. Yeah,
yeah, I hadn't seen that before. It's about 30,000, so it's a good number.
good, yeah.
And that's just a hook to keep you coming back. If you don't renew with them, then
Yes, keep you coming back, but they are very good.
they're good at that.
Yeah, probably a good point in conjunction with what we were just talking about with replacement costs is the value also covered is a little higher than it was last year. So.
Yeah, so far so good. We'll hope it stays this way. We hope we don't have a lot of claims and you have good continued, you're highly engineered, very safe. So we hope to see this again next year. Okay.
Chuck or Ted,
Yeah.
does the Board of Public Works have discretion over the value adjustment? I mean, could we have said, no, just leave the value where it was last year? We feel comfortable with it?
Well, I think we rely on our experts, so you certainly don't want to, if you're underinsured, you may, if there's a large loss, you may not be recovering what you thought you would recover. And that's how it's evaluated. So there are some industry guidelines that we follow.
Yeah, we've been seeing annual increases for, there are various valuation companies that guide everybody on how they value their property. And we've been seeing about anywhere from 1 to 3.5% each year for the last few years, because we're all, dealing with the higher costs of everything. So we were able to kind of pause those increases for the last few years. So this 7.5% should be good for now and hold us steady, maybe for a couple of years. But yes, you do have discretion.
PJ, I think what we might do is change our self-insured retainer amount for a savings rather than keep the value down.
Any other questions for John?
Yeah, so the recommendation is just approve an up to, a not to exceed of 1.226587. When the final numbers come in, then that gives Chuck approval to move forward.
I move that we accept the recommendation as stated for the insurance, property insurance assets.
Support.
Motion was made by Lilly, supported by Maloof. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
So this next item is sort of a good and a bad. The bad is we had a pretty severe event last month that we had to deal with. The good is we had a lot of people come and help us, and our folks as well did a great job. So I assume that if you were in town on the evening of Thursday, May 15th, you probably heard lots of sirens going on. You might have been like me in the basement watching the news, trying to figure out what's going on. Steve and I texting back and forth, trying to figure out where the storm is and where problems we might have. I think one thing we're unique with being on the lakeshore is if you're in Lowell, you might see what's coming. You might know the damage that's occurring before it gets there. We're kind of the tip of the spear a bit in that we're going to see what happens and where that's going to occur. On a positive note, not for the folks in Wakazu Woods, the damage was really concentrated in that area. We had about 2,000 customers out of power initially. We quickly resolved a number of those. There's a little bit on the south side, more in Holland Township, Park Township. Folks that called Steve that night, our linemen that were out there had relaying, I've never seen what I'm seeing. We could not even get into the Wakazu neighborhood at Post and Wakazu intersection because of the number of trees down in that area. And so significant damage. we're usually going to help, and we're calling, Steve's a mutual aid coordinator for MMEA. We're usually the ones going to help. Recently, we went to Harbor Springs with the ice storm, and a number of municipal utilities went up there to help, Petoskey, Harbor Springs, Traverse City. We were calling folks this time. Zeeland had some damage, but they were there after they dealt with that. They'd been up all night. They came and helped us on Friday. Hillsdale ended up coming on Saturday. Lowell was here on Friday, and so was Niles. Really helped. When I first got there, we had talked. I was thinking Tuesday or Wednesday before we had all of that fixed and back up and people restored. We had everybody that could be reconnected. Still a lot of service damage to houses. We had everybody that could be connected by noon on that Sunday. Our line crew folks and a number of others were up from, well, they'd worked on Thursday. A number of them were up from all day Thursday. They worked all Thursday night, Friday morning, all the way till Friday evening. Got a quick rest, came back and Saturday and worked about 16 hours. Slept about 6 hours, 7 hours, came back again and worked on Sunday. So kudos to them. I'd like to kind of go down the list a little bit, and then I have some pictures. So Steve was supposed to be on PTO on that Friday. He did not make it, and it was really the engine that drove a lot of this improvements and the plans and helping in a number of areas. Dan Krieger also was supposed to be off that day, but he came in to relieve Brian, who's our line crew supervisor, who'd been up all night and all that day. Dan was the line crew supervisor before moving over to engineering, so he's very capable in the field. A number of our engineering specialists and our distribution planner. Luis Rodriguez was our SOT that was on standby that weekend, so he also spent a lot of hours here on the weekend. Ben Aubin helped with the restoration on our grid view, so keeping the map, trying to keep the map up to date on who had an outage and who didn't and when restoration times were. Jim Cashmere did a lot with the services. Works a lot with our meters. Also got lunch for people, just everybody was pitching in on a number of things. So Brian and the line crew there are all listed. If you want to scroll down a little bit, again, those guys really spent a number of hours awake and working. Tim Alecki, who lives in the area, directed traffic. One of the things we had was we had lots of gawkers want to come in and see what was going on. I mean, there was an enormous amount of traffic that we had to turn around and, please don't come. Saturday, there was a couple of deputies from the county that came out. Who are the deputies in training? Cadets. So the cadets, they stuck some cadets out there, and they did a really great job of turning people around and keeping the traffic out so we could work. So that was great. Russell came in. He's our facilities, but he came in for the warehouse. All the parts, any parts that we needed, he was available to run them out to the folks and keep track of that. Rita helped with finding hotel rooms. You've got you've got how many? 15 total, I think. Linemen came in. We got to find hotel rooms for everybody to stay. She did a great job with that. And then at the same time, our water wastewater crews weren't unaffected. On the south side, we had a number of consumers' energy outages that power our lift stations in Park and Lake Town Township. They were making sure generators are running. We had some failures of pumps due to lightning, so bypass pumping. And then they also came out and ran the vac truck for us, along with the city, for potholing for new poles. So that's the easiest, quickest way to get a new pole set is to vac that hole out. So I got a number of comments about the city vac truck operators, Melanie, Steve, and Haven, of just knocking it out of the park. They were there all day Friday. They stayed late. I think they were enjoying it. And I mean, a lot of these people, this is what they live for. These folks, they really love the excitement of the outages and helping, and they really get into this. And then our contractors, utility contracting, not something we've hired them to do, but they were integral in clearing the road just getting access. They brought in their front end loader and just cleared trees out of the way so we could get there, along with Monarch, who's our normal tree crew, and then Lakeshore actually came and helped as well. So just shout out to all those folks that allowed us to do what we do and what we like to do best, and get everybody back in service. There's a few pictures. I tried to keep folks' houses out of this and being sensitive, but there's a number of homes that, if they're not a complete loss, they're almost. There's, you can only imagine the trees that are in that area, the size of those trees, and the things that came down, brought our lines down through houses. There's a great video that Steve's son Caden took from a drone. Okay. We're not going to show that here, but on your SharePoint page, on the board SharePoint page, we'll put the link there. And that really gives you a good idea. Julie DeCook and the communications team took most of these photos. There's hundreds to choose from, so I tried to choose the best I could to get our folks and kind of relay. I don't know if you noticed, I think Steve, that pole was about 2 weeks old. We had just done a big improvement on our smart grid, we call it, which helps automate outage response in that area and sectionalizes and isolates the outages so that we know we always have problems there. This took the whole system down, so it really didn't help much there, but unfortunately we had put that just into service. So, Steve, how many new poles? 20 poles broke and needed replacement. Yeah, so it's if you've been able to drive through there, you can kind of very localized. I mean, it was not a tornado apparently, but that's what they said. But we got kind of lucky because you just go south toward the lake. It's very quaint and peaceful. Nothing happened. Go to Ottawa Beach Road, not a lot of damage. So, but right here, pretty significant.
On consumers, our generator ran for 58 hours out by the water.
Well, I was really nervous, and probably Joel was too, because I was watching News 8, and there was a radar indicated tornado at Tunnel Park, which
Yeah.
very nervous about the circuits coming into the water plant, but they did not lose power the whole time. I mean, the outage map would suggest they didn't have it, but they stayed. So yeah. So there's 4 resolutions of appreciation included here that, with your approval, we would send out to those municipalities: Zeeland, Niles, Hillsdale, and Lowell. Sorry, Lowell Light and Power. Just for their appreciation to their folks, and they're named in the resolution that spent a lot of time here helping us and a lot of effort.
I don't think you need a resolution on that, though, do you, to go for?
There's a recommendation for approve, so you guys all would approve,
So
and then PJ
shows that the board
PJ could
affirms.
sign
Yes.
the
Okay.
resolution. Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah, unless there's.
Would the
I don't know
board
if
like to
anybody has
take
any
action on this?
Motion to approve the resolution of appreciation for the aid provided to the Holland BPW.
Second.
So motion by Maloof, second by Lilly. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anything that liability or repair for anybody's property or anything as part of this process? Do we?
No. The trees aren't ours, so the trees that fell, and even the trees in the right of way, I think the county is.
Responsible.
Yep. We get a lot of calls about, hey, can you come get all the stuff that was cut up? And, you know, the county and Park Township are working together on that. So we had a meeting on kind of an aftermath meeting on what to do in those situations. But you saw a lot of stuff, all the poles that we have, we went back in and got rid of all the poles, any of our debris, we go back in and take care of.
Hypothetically, if there is an electrical charge, maybe it blows out a transformer, would cause some kind of a fire that would burn the side of a house or something, just, would that be something that would come back to the BPW, or would that be,
Only if there was negligence.
okay?
So, yeah, if we get claims, the only time we're covering a claim is if we were negligent for some
Right.
reason.
Okay.
Any ahas or takeaways from how the system is fed, routed, constructed in that area that you would change or
Yeah,
adjust?
there's, we've talked for a long time. So one of the expenses that can be incurred when we underground things is the customer service now is owned by, or the new service line is now owned by the customer. That's, not everybody's interested in that. And it'd be a big lift to impose that necessarily on someone. So Zealand actually has an ordinance that residents are required to underground when the utility undergrounds. We haven't kind of gone to that point. We've talked about it a little bit.
They would have to pay for it?
They would have to pay for it. Now, maybe like in an assessment, they could pay for it over time, or we would cover half, or there's a lot of different parts we've talked about. Steve and I have looked at that area, and there's some areas of primary that we could probably look to underground in the future that might have saved us a little bit of time. I don't know, Steve, if you have any more comment on that?
Yeah, we've looked at a number of different areas, and we continue to look at those areas to convert overhead to underground and have in the past. That hasn't changed. In Wakazu, with the heavily tree population that's in that area, obviously the overhead is always a constant thought that how can we do this better? To look at our cost as well as the customer experience with the outages in that area. We continue to look at it. We're looking at some different options. We have a number of residents in that area that are overhead fed. So we could underground our piece of it, and then allow the customer to stay overhead, but then you still have those customers that are fed overhead. We've done this in the past, Keith and Ted, a number of different projects that we had, Van Raalte Avenue, College Avenue, sections of Columbia, Harrison, different areas where we've converted the primary along the street to underground, and then we call it a hybrid undergrounding project where we underground our primary cable, but the secondary that are feeding the homes and so forth, we leave those overhead. That's something that we're constantly looking at. And just continue to evaluate. We haven't made any decisions on what we're currently doing, though.
In our terms of service, Kyle, if somebody upgrades their panel, then we have the option to make them go underground on that upgrade, which we have done where we think we're coming in and we'll do that change.
Because that's a requirement in the city of Holland.
Yep.
And think of it, it's not the perfect, but think of lead service lines and what lead service line when you make something that was private onto the public's side and what that. So it's a complicated deal. We all know, right, that quite frankly, we have a partner that undergrounds more. What was the
Zealand.
The primary?
the primary,
Yeah.
Right.
thank you, than any investor-owned utility. So we're in pretty good shape of being ahead of it more than others, but yeah, it's a costly endeavor to underground it.
And ultimately, we look at the cost is, what is the cost to convert that to underground? And what is that cost gonna bear onto our customers? So we're looking at it from both sides of it.
Yeah.
It'd be easy to say, let's underground everything and take the decision out of it, but that's a very costly endeavor, and ultimately our customers would have to pay for that. So we're just looking at where's the sensible halfway certain areas, but new subdivisions, anytime we develop new subdivisions, they're always underground.
Yeah. I guess for comparison, the total cost of this event's probably gonna be $200,000 or $300,000, most of it labor, not a lot. You know, we had 6 transformers or 10 transformers, 20 poles. Poles are not a ton. As opposed to multiple millions probably to underground that whole area.
Maybe.
So if,
million, I guess.
you know, I guess if it happens every 10 years, you're still talking multiple tens of years for the ROI to work out, so. But it's more of an issue, like when we go in there to refresh, we know we have lines and things to refresh, we try to look at it and go, okay, what makes sense here?
Yeah, and my question wasn't just trying to put everything underground, but
Yeah.
are there some ahas of how the system's fed or redundancy and?
There
that
was
may
one
have-
aha, yeah.
Yeah, may have been allowed, you know, may have kept more people active than like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Due to this
Wakazu-
event, let's look at it a little bit differently.
Going
Yeah.
south on Wakazu, there's a lot of primary there, and we're like, we probably underground this and at least.
And we
get
could,
some
but we
structure.
also feed Wakazu from 2 different areas, from 160th way on the west side and also 152nd. So there's 2 ways of getting into Wakazu. 2 weeks to a month earlier, if we had the outage where we did, we would have had a much, much larger outage because everything was coming in on 152nd, and there was one of these devices, part of our smart grid, and its whole setup was different. So had the storm hit a month earlier, the outage would have looked much bigger for a longer period of time. So we're constantly looking at is how can we do it better, but also how can we do it better for the lowest cost possible for our customers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Move on to item C.
Yeah, thank you. I think Alex is gonna talk about the service center, structure A. As part of a TA last year, we looked at a number of options for our storage areas and we're kind of, with the broadband, effort, we're outgrowing our heated area and garage area a little bit. So this was a very affordable way to expand some storage capacity in it.
Yep, so one of the kind of low-hanging fruit first ideas to help out with some of the storage, primarily actually moving water, wastewater services out of our main garage into what will be heated structure A, which will also allow all the pumps and all the equipment for emergency response to be there at the same spot, so kind of helps with that. So we set up a design build and talked with both EV and Lakewood to come out and see what it would take to convert our existing, basically pole barn with heated insulation and then heating units, also providing a gas service to power that. And then whatever else would be necessary venting-wise, relocation of some electrical as needed to kind of facilitate that conversion. We met with them in the field in early May and kind of walked through what we were thinking and make sure everybody was on the same page. We got 2 bids back, EV Construction for $124,447 with no exceptions, and Lakewood for $111,300 but with exceptions. So we kind of went back and talked to both EV and Lakewood. Lakewood's 2 exceptions. First was it had an assumption on insulation, but a caveat in there that during final design, if there was going to be changes made, there would be an additional cost that could come back. And it was primarily around in that pole structure. It's sheet metal panel, but there is the bottom 3 feet is concrete poured. And so there's no insulation assumed for that, but if during the heating review with the building department, they thought that there would need to be some added, that there could be an additional cost there. EV did not have that. And then second, Lakewood didn't include any gas service. They had that provided by owner. Went back and kind of clarified with them and with EV to make sure if it was included or not. And Lakewood didn't include it. Traditionally, it sounds like that in the past, the gas provider will do the service themselves, and so they'll facilitate a little bit of the communication, but let the cost side of it be handled directly by the owner. EV included that in their costs, which is what we asked for in the original RFP. So that's kind of why we're going with the recommendation of EV. So, any questions?
What's the favor of the board?
Move that we accept the contract with EV Construction as it's stated for the work to be done on the storage facility.
Second.
It's a motion by Lilly, second by Bluth. Further discussion?
Is there a diagram or a layout of what we're talking about?
We don't have one with this, but we can get one.
Curious.
Yeah, it's,
So structure A is a fairly new building that, as part of our, some improvements we did 4 or 5 years ago. It's the smaller structure that you can see from Hastings. So there's 2 separate structures in the storage area.
When I did a tour, there was the pole storage, and then there was a building
That's-
that had the
Yeah.
trucks and so
Yes,
forth.
that's the building.
Yep.
So
that-
that's the
yep,
one you're
the smaller one.
converting to.
Yeah,
Right, from open to closed.
Yeah,
yep.
cool, thanks.
Any further questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Moving on to D.
Yeah. I'm gonna preface D and E with a little bit of background, just because it's been a while since you've seen these contracts. After the vote in August of 22, right, Keith, 22? 22, so almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, goes fast.
We had an RFP process to bring on an owner's engineer. CTC was the successful bidder on that. They'd worked with us before on a number of items, including some high-level estimates for this project. They helped us with material acquisition, and then they also helped us with the RFP for the design and construction of the passings network. And then part of their scope is helping us with invoice approval, design review, QA/QC activities, closing out of the fiber hoods, making sure all the turnover documents are correct, doing inspection, things like that. EX Squared was then hired to do design and construction of the network itself. When you approve that contract, there was a 10% contingency that was approved as part of that contract amount. In that 10%, there was always a intended true-up of what we said bid on and what was actually the final design is gonna be built. So the cost of those activities didn't change, just how many there were, how many feet of overhead fiber, how many feet of underground, how much conduit, how many handholds, that type of stuff. So within that 10%, we have done that final design true-up of 1.3 million. I think the contingency was like $1.7 million. So we have just a little bit left that is uncertain, and a lot of that is, and I'm stealing a lot of the thunder from Pete and Bill, but just kind of give you some background. So that contract is 2 years old, I think, this month or last month. So it's been a while since we've talked about these things. Maybe somebody wasn't even on the board when we talked about, and you all originally approved these dollar amounts. So it's really just, for both of them, giving us a little more room to finish the project. The nice thing is, we just looked at it recently. We don't think we're not planning to go borrow more money. So that second bond that we thought we might need to finish out the project, we don't need that. So that's really keeping the project really within much, even I think more than $1 million lower than the $25 million budget that was expected. And I think we could have borrowed up to $30 million, I think, on the bond. So good news on that front. A little more room needed on these contracts, which, probably not an unexpected thing in a project this size. But overall, the good news is it's coming in, the whole project, the passings project itself, coming in pretty good spot. So I'll turn the CTC discussion over to Pete.
Yeah, good afternoon. CTC Technology has been a partner of Holland BPW for a long time, at least back to 2016 when they did our feasibility study and for what we're now working on. We engaged with them before that too, didn't we, Becky? So they've been a partner that has worked with us very well and knows our environment. So the current owner's engineering contract was established in 2022 at the beginning of this project. Their job was to help us formulate a basis of design, kick off the project, develop the RFP that was used to find EX Squared, who's, as Ted mentioned, is doing our engineering and construction, design and construction, oversee design and construction, and then move into supporting the project as a whole, as Ted mentioned, with our invoice review, which, as you can imagine, is quite complex, with 15 fiber hoods all under various stages of construction, a lot of design work. A great partner, and one that has been very valuable to us to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed in this project. We discovered as we moved along that we had some changes to the level of 10 change orders on the EX Squared project, all of which take tremendous detailed review by CTC. And they put some extra work, well needed and greatly appreciated. We want to keep them around for the rest of the project, of course. So we want to adjust as per the recommendation to add an additional $118,000 to cover change order 1 with the initial design review and management of the project. Also, the project's in great shape, and we want to have them as a tool in our pocket for possible issues moving between now and the end of the project. This $135,000 of contingency, we don't know. That's what contingency's for. We don't know what that would be used for, but we want to have that option available to us. A good example might be quality assurance, making sure that our contractors and our contractor subcontractors are doing the job right. And that's part of what they can do, having an extra pair of professional eyes that have gone through construction of fiber in this level come into town and help us with that has been beneficial in the project so far, and we might want to do that in the future.
Yeah, I think to Pete's point on that, probably something that I should have added here in this recommendation is when we did the RFP for owner's engineer, in order to have a comparison for QA/QC activities, we gave them a number of hours to bid to. That was just an hour's best guess based on what we thought the project might take. They've used all those hours. I don't think we'll have to expend a ton more because I think those early hours have set the expectation for EX Squared on what they're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
But it does give us a few more hours to bring them in. Now, they still have the inspection requirements for the closeout of each fiber hood in their original scope, so that wouldn't be used for that part of the work.
Those are my comments, and this is a recommendation before you.
Can we have a motion on this recommendation?
Motion to approve the contract value increase with CTC Technology and Energy, as stated.
Support. Motion by Maloof, supported by Lynn. Any further questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we keep moving along. So maybe Dave did skip this meeting on purpose, I don't know.
Well.
So item E is, again, now we're talking about design, construction, and engineering. Kind of back to the big lift on this was the $17.5 million that's already been approved. This is, again, all the final designs now done. We have the true up on the quantities. We've agreed to that change order. Now this is to cover some things that probably Bill can give you some examples of changes that have occurred that are probably going to occur in the future on right-of-way permitting and some other things where we discover, oh, this was private property that we didn't know about, things like that. So please, Bill.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and welcome. So the original contract with our design build contractor EX2 was based on this high level of network design used for the bidding purposes. Now that the final design is complete, quantities and labor materials have been updated, just like Ted mentioned. Looking at some of the examples that we're running into today, we've seen some of the design changes that were required because of the right-of-way permits, permitting procedures. A lot of it is due to privates trying to get access, so we have to reroute the main infrastructure, the main backbone, if you will, to suffice the route and make sure its longevity is there without disrupting or going further deeper down the hole of easements issues. That's just one. So looking and predicting for the remaining fiber hoods, we're looking at having a contingency of 300,000 that'll help in case of anything unforeseen will happen. We've approved up to 11 change orders. That's all based off that current contract total value with that 10% contingency. So looking to, again, for our team to additionally request 300,000 contingency increasing, the help to cover potential costs tied to the remaining right-of-way permitting while keeping the project within the approved 25 million budget. Any questions?
Yeah, I might just add to Bill's comment. If there's something that they missed in the design, even though we reviewed it, it's still on them. That's a cost on them. It doesn't mean they get more money to now change it. So there's still that, and CTC's a part of this, there's still that review going on of a change order that decides whose problem really is it. Is it something that neither of us could have anticipated? Okay, that's a change. If it's something that you should have known about, you did the walk down, whatever, then we would push back and say, okay, that's on you. So.
Can you provide an example? I think you talked about thinking you're going to go this way with the backbone, and you need to go this way. Some of that, is it structures that change, or is it are we paying for right of way differently than what we do for other electrical?
You want to talk about Waverly, kind of this issue we might?
Yeah,
have on
absolutely. I mean, just basically, for example, in the upcoming firehood, that would cover a lot of the areas like Farmstead, Rest Haven, that section. So that Waverly, all of that, we are getting pushed back on the amount of crossing that is needed to get the distribution fiber from the west side to the east side, right? And there's a lot of conversations going back as we kind of push and encourage the design team to kind of say, look, we want to comply with what city engineers are looking for and their concerns. That's valid. I mean, it's I'm sure a lot of pain points with a lot of hits back in the past. But at the same time, we need that infrastructure. So we've come back to them saying, okay, if we redesign it with this amount of crossings, can we get a pass on the permit? And still there's a lot of, can you go even less? And if we go any less, we're not going to create the redundancy we're looking for or creating the ring that we need to make sure that if one part of that zone gets hit by some chance, it does affect the whole city, if not the rest of that zone. So that's kind of one thing to give you an example going back and forth as far as how this was originally designed, but now we have to kind of change the design per engineering standards that are coming from the city, for example.
Some of this could just be original design versus there's been development in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's more development, so you have to have more product out in the field to support that development, so then that would be covered by this. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
absolutely.
could be one.
I mean, it's a whole
We don't,
collection of different things.
there's some areas we thought were public roads, which are not, which are private, so we're having to get easements and do some things.
Condo associations.
Right. I think they designed it to what's affordable and from a reliability standpoint. Now we have to go test that with the city for, here's all the other utilities that are in that area, et cetera. We prefer you didn't hump the road 5 times, by crossing Waverly or whatever that is, or hit the storm sewer. So, like Bill said, there's always that back and forth with the city. Yeah, we can make some changes. How much are you really requiring? Because now we're doing a total redesign of this area that's really going to cost a lot of money. So it's trying to be sensitive to their needs, but maybe pushing back sometimes where we don't want the cost to get out of control too, so.
Right.
So it's not really acquiring property necessarily, maybe writing easement agreements between attorneys and property owners and things of that nature,
Yeah.
costs associated.
Or we
with
go a
Yeah.
different way, so we don't have to deal with the easements, would be more of an
So then
EX
you have-
squared cost.
Right.
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we go
Cost-
through a major evaluation to figure out what's going to be more cost
different
effective.
engineering and cost a little bit more, but avoid the easement.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
What's the favor of the board on this?
I move that we approve the recommendation for an increase in the EX2 engineering construction contract contingency of $300,000 for an approved contract price of $17,864,961.20. So, as written.
Support.
Motion by Lily, supported by Lynn. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Thank you. Thank you.
It isn't holding up the project
No.
yet.
No, no, we're still within the contingency, the original contingency. We thought it was a good time to bring both of those items together so we could kind of have that conversation. We haven't done an update in a little while, so that's kind of why it's prospective, I guess, Paul. All right, item F. So talking about underground and underground electric, and fiber maintenance, so everything this meeting. So we have typically a 3-year cycle on our underground contract. This is our current contract's ending on July 1st of this year. So we went out to bid, and Steve can kind of talk about maybe what we had hoped would happen with the different way we bid this and what kind of actually happened and how to move forward.
Well, thanks, Ted. Yes, typically, we do this once every 3 years. It's been done this way for many, many years. This year, we decided that we thought we would try to break up the two contracts. And basically, everything that's underground, put that in one contract. And for fiber optic itself, not electrical, but just the fiber on the overhead piece, make that a separate contract. And allow various vendors throughout Michigan to be able to bid on those contracts individually. And also some of our past vendors, allow them to bid on it collectively together where they could bid on both contracts. When we did that, we found out that there was only 2 vendors that really wanted to bid on both of them. We had a lot of interest on the front side at the pre-bid meeting. We had various different vendors looking at the fiber piece as well as the underground. But then when we received the bids, it was from only 2 different vendors, as it says here, from Utility Contracting and also Western Telecom. Both those contractors we've done work with in the past number of years. Even this past year, we've had for the past 3 years, we had a contract with Utility Construction, but we've also pushed small purchase orders out to Western Telecom, where timing just made it right for us just to utilize Western Telecom as well. This particular contract is not exclusive, and the quantities in this contract, you see it's 4.7 million. That's based on what we expect. That's an estimate, but that number could go up and could go down. Even this current calendar year, the fiscal year starts July 1. In the pre-bid meeting, I mentioned to both all the bidders, prospective bidders, that those numbers are an estimate and what we have historically used. Right now, we're in a time where we're doing a lot of work on the make-ready side, so we're not spending a lot of time and effort on the underground. So those numbers are a little bit high for what we see for the next 6 months. But come January, when we're done doing the make-ready piece for the broadband group, we'll kind of go back into more underground replacements, more underground work. And that's also dependent on the number of new customers that we have as well. So to make a long story short, if you look there, those two combined, when you combine those two together, they're almost exact.
$243.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. And I spoke with both vendors, and I'm like, this looks all very suspicious. There was none of that going on. Ultimately, it's two very close bids. And I would consider both those valuable because they're that close. Western Telecom is a local contractor here in Holland, as well as outside of Holland. They do a lot of work outside of Holland. Utility is based out of Sparta, but they also have a building here in Holland as well. And Utility has been doing work for us for a very long period of time. Both of them very, very good contractors. We've had lengthy conversations with both of them. However, the staff does recommend going with Utility Contracting for that $4.7 million, even though that's $243 more. But that is only on an estimate.
Steve, I guess I would just clarify, similar to our broadband construction contract with the X2, they were given quantities of certain activities to bid to, which resulted in this number. So we know what price each activity will cost. How much we actually end up paying them is an estimate at this point.
Yeah.
Which is, we use the 3-year average of how much work we've done is how we came to these quantities. So
they bid
you're
it.
really approving, as in the recommendation, you're approving their bid sheet, which, just to be sensitive to pricing, we didn't include here. But that's when you add all those activities up, that's the total.
It's a per foot, whether it's conduit or pulling wire in or fiber optic in. It's basically
Setting
putting that
transformer.
infrastructure in the ground, or setting a transformer, in that case, setting a concrete base. We actually added to the quantity of items. We added more so that we could get a little more granularity, so we don't run in a per hour kind of thing. It's more per item.
Yeah, the more efficient they are, the better outcome for them.
Any questions from the board?
How did Western Telecom take your recommendation?
Very positive. Western Telecom does have a very, I'm going to say, aggressive, busy customer base here in Michigan. They are completely accepted.
They were gonna have to staff up pretty considerably.
Yeah.
And they were nervous about that. They're happy with our relationship. We bid some things out and have them do some jobs. So kind of they're really in the fight because they're more favorable on the fiber optic. Once we get to maybe a shorter or a fewer drops per month build on our Holland City Fiber project, and ITG doesn't want to stick around here, they're a good option for that drop construction build. So that's, that relationship is good, that we can put that out to bid with them too, so.
They very much wanted to stay in the game, and so they bid it appropriately, but like Ted said, they would have to staff up quite significantly, as well as equipment and so forth. Utility would just status quo, they'd just keep right on rolling. So Western Telecom, we had a very candid conversation, just like we're talking about now. And
We used Western Telecom for years. They're started by some retired AT&T guys. And of course, we weren't doing any electrical. It was all fiber and communications. But we used them all over the place, all over the state and the Midwest.
They do all of Zealand's work.
Do they?
Yeah, they don't have near as much as we do.
It's a good house.
But, yeah.
And quite honestly, a great number of folks at Utility worked for Western Telecom and kind of flip-flop back and forth. But Utility was started by a number of individuals from Western Telecom.
Interesting.
Small
Would like
world.
to make a motion?
Motion to approve the contract with Utility Contracting Company as stated in the recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Maloof, second by Lilly. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, I think the aim was to tire you out until we got to item G, and then we would just, approve it, but,
Don't tell them that.
I know they're gonna do their due diligence. So, this year, we're working on a tactical action to really try to, improve our purchasing process and get rid of some pain points. The purchasing policy is not a pain point, but there are some things in there that need clarification. We think with costs rising, some dollar numbers are appropriate. I don't want to steal all of Chuck's thunder, but this is a delegation policy that you all approve for us to be able to do, or really for Dave, and then for him to delegate that to whoever that may be in our internal policy. So, Chuck, and I don't know if we can get the microphone for Chuck, Steve.
So Becky, why don't you go down just a paragraph or so? Instead of going through the red line, attached to this recommendation was the red line version of our existing policy. But these are the highlights. And it really was, in many cases, it was just clarifying what the expectation of the policy was. The terms were a little bit ambiguous, so we've cleaned that up. The other issue was some of the amounts, the policy's been in place for a long time. Some of the amounts aren't as large as they used to be. I mean, basically the items that require a PO, for example, at $1,000, everything costs more than $1,000 today. So there was a request that we raise that to some number, but then the TA group agreed that 5 would be the best value to raise that to. Let me go down. And then there was also some ambiguity about when the city attorney needs to get involved when terms and conditions were wanted to be amended or different. And so that basically says that any time that we have a contract or a PO modification over 5,000, for an item over 5,000 would require approval as to form by the city attorney. Change orders, again, there was a little bit of ambiguity in the original policy. So this basically says that change orders are approved by the general manager or designee. That designee language was not there before, or it was, but it limited the amount. So it's regardless of the amount of the change order, it's up to the general manager to assign that delegation. And the competitive procurement requirement was raised from 5,000 to 10,000. Again, it's in the last 5 or 6 years, pricing has changed enough where that change made sense, where it'll reduce the administrative burden quite a bit, and we determined that the risk to doing that is very low.
So you mentioned like the time frame of 5 or 6 years. Most of these original numbers were established then.
I
anybody
think
know
those
or
dollar amounts
prior?
have probably been 20-plus years. I've only been here 12, but I think if we look back to previous
long time.
policies, it's been a long time. Yeah.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I just have one. Under the policy, it talks about broad-based competition and supplier diversity. I'm assuming there that you're talking about, as we just saw in this last recommendation, that we have more than one vendor that we can potentially go to for this. Backup, I almost call it, rather than diversity, but the ability to go to other vendors is important, I think, for us, because, we buy a lot of stuff, services and equipment. So is that what you're talking about there in that diversity?
Well, I think there are, first of all, there's language in the policy that talks about many things, like preference for local vendors, which is still there. That's still expected. The big challenge was we got a lot of vendors that just don't want to bother to quote at $5,000. They're just busy. It's not worth their time. So we were getting challenges of getting people that were interested in our business, believe it or not. That in terms, you have a lot of difference of opinion now on what acceptable terms are. That wasn't a problem before. And the smaller vendors really had a problem. It's difficult talking. They don't even want to engage on it. So the larger purchases, larger vendors, it's a little bit easier to negotiate or to get those in front of an attorney.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Paul, one example I might give is back to our transformer example. We might decide to pay a little bit more to try to make sure we have a diversity of supply and we don't have all our eggs in one basket. Say there's a failure common to a certain transformer type, or keeping, to Chuck's point, keeping folks interested in bidding. If they're always bidding and never getting
Right.
the job, then, you know, so there's some flexibility as far as that's concerned.
Makes sense.
Could we have a motion?
Motion to approve revision 4 of the purchasing and contracts delegation policy.
Support.
It's a motion by Maloof, supported by Lynn. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries.
All right.
Any other business?
I have no other business, nor do I have any communications from the general manager or myself. Next board meeting is a study session, June 23rd. And I know we have 3 items for study for that.
Any communications from the board? Could we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Send you an email when that video is uploaded.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Likely it's gonna be tomorrow.
Ted, you have some things for me to sign?
I do. As you put your signature on these resolutions.
Thank you.
See ya.
You got some mic drop for us? Nice work.
I'll be right back. Yeah. Thank you.